Hello, and welcome to In the Court of the Wenton King. Today we'll be reviewing
Low by David Bowie.
Bowie.
David Bowie.
There it is. So we go back to last week when we were talking about Station to Station, and around that time the kind of music he was listening to and what he was doing. Whilst recording Station to Station, he was also doing the soundtrack to the film he was in, Man Who Fell to Earth. And stop! Stop! Yeah, he was in Man Who Fell to Earth, but he was also trying to do the soundtrack to the Man Who Fell to Earth, which was never used for whatever reason. It's never been released, so maybe it wasn't good enough, whatever. But one of the things that came out of that was the track Subterraneans, or an embryonic version of that track, which ended up on this album. So that's really where this stuff came from. Supposedly on the tour for the Station to Station, he was listening to Metal Machine music by Lou Reed and Kraftwerk, so lots of krautrock and that kind of thing, but importantly Frippino stuff. I think No Pussyfooting was the album he was listening to. So that's what he was influenced by at the time. From that he actually decided to work with Brian Eno, didn't he, and make a triptych of albums. And the big thing he was talking about was the new school of pretension. That's what Bowie was calling it, the new school of pretension, which is more meaningful than it sounds, I think. There's a bit on what I think is the best song on the album, Warzawa, where he's kind of wailing, and it sounds an awful lot like a great band called Magma. They've made their own language to sing the songs in. The difference is Bowie hasn't made his own language, he's just singing gibberish. He's just going Patola Nila Porno, which is pretentious. He's actually literally being pretentious. So I think, unlike ELP and Magma and whatever, which aren't really pretentious at all, this is literally trying to be pretentious.
You've come from this from a completely different angle that I come to it. I thought this was basically the start of his drying out period in Berlin, basically.
Oh, it is, yeah.
He decided Los Angeles was a bit of a... he was going to end up dead or something like that.
Yeah, because of all the cocaine. Yeah, unfortunately Berlin turned out to be the heroin capital of the world. However, this album is recorded in Paris before he went to Berlin, actually. But yeah, so you hear all this thing about pretentious and arty and all this, and you put it on, and you get... and, waiting for the sound and vision, and all that kind of stuff, and you think, what the hell is this? This isn't what I expected. But it is unique, and it takes you on a journey. It starts in one place and goes somewhere else completely.
It does seem to be a sort of narrative going on. It's the kind of impression I got from Bowie behind him. That was what was interesting. And the first side is a lot of sort of like really short, direct, sort of autobiographical songs. And then the second side is sort of the answer to that. It's almost like the first side is where he's coming from. Yeah. And the second side is sort of where he's going to. I tell you what, I mean, it's often said that, this is a very low album in the sense that the stuff he's singing about is very sort of melancholic, and downbeat, but the actual songs themselves on the first side, they're actually quite upbeat. Yeah,
they're poppy songs.
It's not like Radiohead or something.
No, exactly, which is more like what you expect.
Yeah, you do have to sort of break it down a little bit. And sort of on Station to Station, where I said, the songs are quite wordy, they're actually incredibly condensed on this. Yeah. The first side is all about distilled ideas.
But I do really like the idea of the record company execs putting this on and listening to it and being told this is the new album and not being happy. I think you can see why he wanted Brian Eno, because Brian Eno's thing was to try and remove all the sense of self from the music. He was trying to make egoless music. And you think about David Bowie, all of his albums have him on the front. It's all about him.
Why is it called the David Bowie album, not a David Bowie Brian Eno album? So is David Bowie just a brand name?
I don't know.
I mean, he roped someone in to sort of...
Well, before this album, his sort of musical director, the arranger, was Carlos Alomar, who's still there, guitarist guy. And Eno kind of took that role, and I really feel sorry for Carlos Alomar at this point, because he was hired to do the soul period, and he was brought in as a sort of normal, soulful American kind of musician, and he's come into this thing where Brian Eno has got chords written down and they're playing it, and he's randomly pointing at chords, play random chords, and he's got these oblique strategy cards, which are basically a set of 100 cards of ideas. So in the same way as Bowie cutting out things to make lyrics, they're doing that with the music as well. They're using this sort of sense of randomness. But I do feel sorry for Carlos Alomar, who wouldn't have understood what the hell was going on.
Yeah.
Track 1.
Speed of Life.
Speed of Life. I think this is the worst song on the album.
I wouldn't say it's the worst song. It has got that drippy feel to it. This is setting the scene for the autobiography of the LA period. It's got quite a steady beat, but the tones are all drawled and it's kind of drunk feeling to it.
Yeah.
That sense of paranoia is not there for some reason.
But then we go on to the next song. It's not really a song. It's like a middle eight. And I think what happened was that they'd sort of, out of these weird, surreal jams, they would create these things, and then Bowie would say, right, let's make a song out of it now. And Eno would say, no, that's it, you've done it. Because it's kind of weird and off-kilter. That gives it an interesting vibe. Here we hear the new guitarist, Ricky Gardner, who I've never heard of, has a great tone. He sounds like a really good guitarist. There's a real nice thick tone to it. If he'd have been on Station to Station, it would have been fantastic.
Oddly, it's very hard to pin down what it's about, religious things, that kind of. But unless you know that, it's going to be fairly meaningless to you.
Track 3 is What in the World?
Sounds like computer games. The album feels all over the place. By when you're 3 tracks in, you sort of got 3 sort of what's this?
Yeah,
trying to get a grip on it. Like what's he trying to say to me? But his life was all over the place.
That sound effect at the beginning. I know Brian Eno had a synth in a briefcase, but it had no keyboard. It just had a joystick.
Oh, cool.
Which is obviously where all those weird sounds come.
Track 4.
Yeah, this is Sound and Vision. This is a pop song. This is completely out of place on the album. It is a complete song. It's even got sort of ABBA-like backing vocals, and yet the lyrics are incredibly bleak, and they're all about him being trapped in this LA hell in the dark.
Yeah, I kind of like this.
But it's nice, though, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a nice. I can imagine sort of listening to this in the car on a sunny drive back from Coventry or something like that. Always crashing in the same car.
Sadly, much better title than the song, but the song itself, nice bit of melancholy, but it doesn't really go anywhere.
There's a sort of humour to this song. Although it is melancholy, there's sort of looking at it a little bit objectively. This one is literally autobiographical.
Next song.
Be My Wife.
Be My Wife.
Be my wife. Be my wife.
Is it ridiculous? I think it's ridiculous. I don't think it's serious at all. I think it's silly.
No, well,
silly lyrics.
It's silly, maybe silly lyrics. I've watched some interviews with Angie Bowie, and she does seem quite a handful, and it does seem an incredibly bustable sort of relationship.
Yeah, at this point it was.
Yeah, I mean, he dumped her in Switzerland as far as I can. He buggered off to Berlin and Paris and stuff like that, and this is the song we get out of it, but I really don't like it.
I don't know whether I like it or not. It's just so stupid.
I've listened to it. I did think this wouldn't be out of place on a Blur album.
Yeah.
I don't know if that means...
You are right.
Yeah.
But remember, this first side is massively influential on all that stuff.
I'm sure it's very popular, but I can't see why.
Yeah.
A new career in a new town.
Instrumental. It's nice enough. It doesn't really go anywhere, but I think the whole point of it is to set up introducing the next side.
It does feel like a bridge to side 2. I quite like it because I like instrumentals, and it's quite a pleasant instrumental.
First song on side 2, suddenly the song lengths go and the style of music changes dramatically, really. Yeah, I think this is the best song on the album. Warzawa. Yeah. It's about Warsaw, obviously it's about Poland. Do you remember when you said about, when we were reviewing Yes, it wasn't clear what the music was about. It didn't feel like it was about anything. This is really obviously about stuff. It evokes the landscape very, very clearly. You can be doing anything, and it will feel like it's reflecting what you're doing. You can be driving down the road, and you'll feel it.
I do find with sort of these are basically sort of like soundscapes, typical Brian Eno type, kind of things, which is cool. But there is a tendency for that kind of music to sort of merge into the background very easily.
Yeah.
I think it's helped by the fact that sound 1 is a lot of short ditties, and that kind of focuses your attention a little bit. So you're focused on the music, so it helps to focus a little bit. This kind of thing is a little bit more universal, You know, you don't, as you say, you don't need to interpret anything because it's a little bit more direct.
Yeah.
And that's what I mean by universal. I don't mean it's universally liked.
Yeah, it's more direct than the first side.
Yeah. What I do sort of worry about, which is I'm still finding my way around Bowie. How much of this is Bowie and how much of this is Brian Eno?
Yeah, and it's not clear. Yeah.
No, apparently this was sort of constructed while Bowie was in Paris at court. I think it was something presented to him when he came back.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. And he really liked it and integrated it into the album. But
it's an Eno song then?
Yeah, it's basically an Eno song.
Doesn't matter though, does it?
Does it? That's what I'm struggling to sort of come to terms with.
But that's kind of the whole point of the whole thing, isn't it? It's removing the individual from the music.
Yeah, but then there's proper accreditation. Like, who is the artist? I mean, David Bowie is definitely an artist, whereas the previous guy we did, Michael Jackson, was an entertainer primarily. David Bowie sort of spans both. He is an entertainer. His stage presence is
he does
is
do
exciting
stuff.
and interesting, but he presents himself as an artist primarily, and that's what interests him most. I'll tell you what it sort of reminds me of, the Damien Hirst skull, the diamond skull. He didn't actually craft the skull.
He just told someone to do it.
He told someone to do it, someone who worked for him. The idea isn't not original. There is a guy who does that. He does jewel encrusted skulls universally, and that's where the idea comes from. So there's no inspiration there. It's more a sort of commercial opportunity.
From Eno's perspective, it's a boost to his popularity. From Bowie's perspective, it's suicide.
But it does sort of add to the myth of Bowie being this sort of constantly evolving, constantly changing sort of artist. That's what they say strength. But is he changing, or is he just incorporating other people's?
Yeah, he's not really changing. No, I don't buy the changing thing at all. He's just finding new stuff.
The question is, I quite like this album, but do I like Eno, or am I warming to Bowie?
Exactly.
I don't know. It's interesting actually because they. Philip Glass, who we saw last year, did a symphony.
Low Symphony.
Yeah, Low Symphony, and it's credited as Philip Glass, Brian Eno, and David Bowie.
So your next song, Decade, whereas the last song was about Poland, now it's actually about Berlin. So the start of the Berlin trilogy, for the first time, is actually about Berlin, and like this is a good one too. Cool sounds. Next one,
Weeping Wall.
Weeping Wall. Obviously, again, it's about Berlin Wall. Obviously, this one is supposedly directly influenced by Philip Glass. I don't know. I think it's the vibraphone, blinker, blinker, blinker stuff, which makes me think of Lock, Stones and Aspic Part 1. But I assume it comes from Philip Glass. I think maybe this is the weakest out of the four. Doesn't mean it's not any good. It's also the shortest. It probably doesn't really go anywhere in the way the others do. But it's good. It's alright.
Yeah. And the next track,
the final track.
It's quite a long one, Subterraneans.
Subterraneans. This is the one that came from the Man Who Fell to Earth stuff, allegedly. It's much more what I'd call ambient sounds and washes of chords. An awful lot like later Robert Fripp stuff, when he stopped using tape loops and started using electronic sounds.
It's the juxtaposition with Speed of Life that sort of interests me.
Yeah.
That's what makes Speed of Life sort of fundamental to the album. Because you listen to it in relation to Subterraneans, and that effectively is the journey you're going on through.
And it does go from dreary populist music.
It's like this is an instrumental from LA,
and
then this is an instrumental in my next incarnation.
Yeah, which is in fact also from LA, as it turns out. So you've got the bit of saxophone, and obviously that's also about. I think it's about East Berlin, this one. So it's about sort of remembering the past and how they're sort of closed off from the rest of the world. My memory of this song is because I got this album while I was at uni. So particularly Subterraneans, I think, really makes me think of the very early morning at uni. You know, when you've been up all night, it's like 4 o'clock in the morning.
That sounds an ideal time to listen to it.
Yeah, a time that I no longer experience. So, thank you very much. Well, I hope that made sense. It may not have made sense. We'd like to thank our guests.
Our producer and director.
Yeah, producer and director, there they are. So, we'll see you next time for Heroes.
Bye-bye.
Bye. turn this off?
Press the button.